America, my name is Osei-Frimpong, and this is the Black Athenians. I'm in Athens, Georgia, and I come to you live every Friday at 4-ish to talk to you about local politics and how local politics actually, all politics is local insofar as we all live in a locality. So if you are surrounded by poor black people who are themselves surrounded by very wealthier white people, then this is the kind of local politics you need. And that goes for Mobile, it goes for Columbia, South Carolina, it goes for St. Louis. It's a quality of politics that's going to secure black people freedom. And that's what I try to give to people every Friday at 4 o'clock. And today I'm going to talk about rights or rebellion, because we saw just now that it takes an entire rebellion just to get one cop arrested. It took a village. It took a village to get one cop arrested. And you have to ask yourself, do we really have rights if that is the case? Right, so we're going to go over this graphic concerning what really, moves social justice policies and how they fail. They fail because they're captured. They fail because we talk about trying to fix the behavior of the oppressed and not the oppressor. They fail because of lack of oversight. We just set up a nice program and let it be. And then we fail because they're left for interpretation. And the left for interpretation is very important if you're trying to do a protest movement, insofar as the goal of a protest movement is to get the media's attention, to dramatize a struggle. But once you have the media's attention, you have to have your talking points right. Right, before I was thinking about calling for protest, an open-air protest in the beginning of the quarantine, an open-air protest, because I knew that would get the media's attention. But my talking points were very clear. I wanted hazard pay for essential workers. I wanted a federal job guarantee for all those people who are not working, with replacement pay while they're being quarantined until they get called up. And then I wanted healthcare, right? So you have to have, if you're going to lead a protest movement, the goal of the protest is to dramatize the struggle. Actually, I'm lying. There are two goals, and Gandhi and King both kind of equivocate, but they get this much right. There are two goals. Dramatize the struggle to, one, get the media's attention to make your case, because there's a finite amount of attention. And you can't get it all the time. Believe it or not, when I call Channel 4 News or whatever, they don't always put me on. And that's a problem. So the goal of the protest is to get the media's attention so that you can make your case, but you have to be prepared to make your case. Second is you have to exert leverage insofar as you're not really a person unless you can check other people, right? You're not really an institutional actor unless you can check other institutional actors. You're not autonomous unless you can negate their aspirations. Right now, Minneapolis had an aspiration of going to order and business as usual. But unless black people or anybody was willing to negate that aspiration, they were going to be ignored. So I'll say this again. You're not really real unless you can negate the real person's aspiration. Then you become relevant, right? And that's what, people call leverage or cover. But that's just the truth about power. You need to be able to negate their aspiration. So one, you need to be smart enough to figure out what their aspiration is. Maybe it's order, maybe it's control, maybe it's a sense of duty. Whatever their aspiration is, you need to be able to figure it out. And then you need to be willing to risk to negate it. Now, when I say risk to negate it, that's very important, because don't expect this social justice work to get you friends or to keep you a job, to get you an A in your class, or to even keep your life. No, you're going to go for freedom, and that means you're going to have to be able to risk everything. And if you're not willing to risk everything, you'll end up going to work for or be a slave of the people who are willing to risk everything. So, I hope that was a taste of what's coming on before, but right now, let me hit the opening.
To the beat, y'all. Yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I paint the White House black and it can feature in your front. To the beat, y'all.
So I'll tell you again, the goal of a protest is, one, you need to be able to make your case. So have a press release, right? Have your talking points right. Be studied. Have your data. This is what Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell have been very good in instilling. Have your arguments right. And I try to give you the content of your arguments every week at 4:00. Second, you need to do it in a way that negates their aspiration. What do they want? A lot of people just want peace and quiet. That means you need to be noisy. A lot of people want the well-functioning of a society. That means you need to be able to stop the functioning. And that's it. You need to calibrate your protest to stopping a function. This isn't really, if you're not stopping their function, then they're going to ignore you, right? I figured this out. Well, this is in the literature, but I really saw it one time when I was at a protest in Chicago and it was cold. And the people we were protesting in were it was cold because it's Chicago, but the people we were protesting were in like a climate controlled office building. And I was just thinking, this isn't going to work because they're in a climate controlled office building and I'm freezing my black ass off. So you need to be able to negate their aspiration. If they can live their life while you're protesting, if they can live their life while you're protesting and it not change their day-to-day plans, then you're setting yourself up for a loss, right? So you need to be able to negate their aspirations, and you also need the goal, since one of the goals is to get the press, you need to be prepared for the press. Have your talking points ready, right? And you also want, the theories, you also want to do it in a way that shows their inhumanity. Right? So if you can, the nonviolent protest is great because you're just living your life, except not living your life according to their rules, but their life depends on you living your life according to their rules. So they have to bring out the violence to stop you. This is why, drinking out of the white person's fountain or, the salt strikes in the Salt March in India or any of those kind of nonviolent protests worked, because you weren't actually doing anything wrong. You were just showcasing your humanity, but doing it in a way that really shows how invested they are in you behaving as if you're not a human, right? So you break their rules, especially their ones that shouldn't be rules in the first place, and then make them violently police you breaking their rules, and always do it with a camera rolling, right? So, I think a great kind of a low-key nonviolent protest was my man Christian Cooper, the birder, who was videotaping the woman Amy Cooper letting her dog run off leash, and she went violent. She called out a hit on him, and that was, and that dramatized his humanity and her violence in a way that was mwah. And now we have a huge discourse or a place to talk about how we need to talk about white women, and not just white people, because white people is an abstract universal. People come in at least two forms, men and women, and they're different and they function different in white supremacy. So we have a industry of literature on how to deal with white men and how awful they are. But meanwhile, the only reason we have mass incarceration, school segregation, housing segregation, and this all leads to job segregation is because we don't know how to deal with white women. Nobody knows how to tell white women to shut up. And since we can't tell white women to shut up, you know who ends up winning? White women and their husbands, fathers, sons. So our inability to deal with white women is what sustains racial justice. Because we know and even talk about white women as being the problem is what sustains racial injustice. They're the bottleneck. Even if they're only 15% of the problem, it's a sticky 15. It's you can have you can be in your bedroom and it'll be even a big room. But if you just have one wasp in there, screw up your whole night's sleep. Right? So that's what social justice is. We've done everything right. We've vacuumed the floor in our room. We've cleaned it up. We've made our bed, but we just have one wasp, and that wasp is literally a wasp that we don't know what to do with, and that's screwing up our night's sleep, and that's just screwing up our world. When I say literally a wasp, I meant figuratively, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. We don't know how to deal with white women, so we aren't going anywhere. Even if you do everything else right, the inability to deal with the fragility of white women and how that controls and how that's structured to control the entire racial police and school and neighborhood dynamic is why we don't have racial justice. We can do why we're not going to until, like, I don't know too much about too much, but I do know that if we're serious about racial justice and labor justice, when that fight comes and you have to pick sides, I know for one thing, white feminists will be on the other side. They will be on the other side. Like any racial justice or labor justice fight that is on the same side as white feminists all the time, it's not really a racial justice fight. Nope. Because they're not marching in the street with the pussy hats in order for Amy Cooper to surrender her power, her ability to sick the cops on Christian Cooper, the birder, who was trying to stop her from unleashing her dog in New York City. All right, so let's deal with this graphic, right? Because I think it's actually a very good graphic. I didn't make it, but it's right. So how justice and equity policy fails, political capturing. So now you're going to have a whole lot of Democrats take their struggle and use it for their own campaign and offer feckless solutions. We do have a politically preventable problem. But they're going to take their solutions, which are feckless, which means without effect, and it's going to take 10 years for us to figure out that their solution was inadequate. It's actually not going to take 10 years, but they just bought themselves 10 years stalling, right? So you have to watch out for political capturing. And people talk about George Floyd, the man who was murdered in broad daylight in Minneapolis that led to the latest uprising. And you have to understand, he was murdered on the crime of trying to pass a fake $20 bill. By the time at a Cubs food store, by the time you're walking into a Cubs food store and your aspiration is to pass a fake $20 bill, so many things have targeted you in America. At the time a black man's doing that, so many things have targeted you for failure in America that, like, you're already unfree. There's no way a free black man has a plan to go to a grocery store and fake $20. You know, like, that's not even a real crime. I mean, if it's a real crime, but it's not even a real, like, bad act. I mean, it's an act of desperation. I'm thinking about all the people who've looted the federal government of trillions of dollars over the last few weeks, securing their lives and like vacation houses and private schools by like government by lobbying, and what Kelly Loeffler was doing, the guy from North Carolina, like that kind of power play is something, this wasn't even on this guy's radar. He was trying to pass $20, and by the time you pass in $20, or you're writing a bad check, or trying to cash some monopoly money, your life is already pretty bad. Like, we've already failed you as a nation. So we need to think about the politically preventable problem that led to the crime, and in addition to the murder, because there's no way, no one's going to tell me George Floyd was free when he walked into that. He was coerced by, like, awful economic circumstances. And you know they're awful economic circumstances when you understand that, over 40 million people have filed for unemployment as of this taping. 40 million people. We only have like 300 and some odd million people in the United States. So that is a chunk of the workforce that filed for dole, right? And that means you're just destabilized generally. And even if Floyd didn't file for dole himself, like, the people he usually hits up for money have filed for dole. So, like, these are politically preventable problems. We could have instituted a federal job guarantee with replacement pay while you're on quarantine. So you get 90% of $20 an hour while you're on quarantine, and when they call you up, you go to work with proper PPE, personal protective equipment, and you get your full salary. Like, we could have done that. Like, there's enough work to do just in wellness checks. Sometime in this COVID, and I will bet all my money that sometime over this quarantine, people have just died in their home and nobody's noticed yet. nobody's noticed yet. We don't have wellness checks. So, political capturing, politicians offering feckless solutions. Second bit is policies that aim to fix the oppressed and not the oppressor. That is very important because this is where the respectability politics people, I blame black people last. But this is where the respectability politics people have really been kind of useless and actually distracting for the movement. They think, if you just kind of put up your pants and work well, then you'll be free in America. No, you won't. You can do everything right, and you're still Christian the birder who gets called on for making a white woman upset. Like, Christian the birder has a Harvard degree. This is Christian Cooper he watches birds, so I call him Christian the birder, especially because both Amy Cooper, the very, very dangerous white woman, and Christian the birder, Christian Cooper, have the last name Cooper. That happens because as black people, we're a product of rape. I tell the story that my mother's last name is Graham. She's from South Carolina. She's from one of those cities in South Carolina where there's white Grahams, and then across the street there are black Grahams, and everybody knows they all have the same great granddaddy, because we're the product of rape. That's the way we've made white people to do to black people, and black people. Many of us are the product of rape. My dad's from Ghana, and my mom's from South Carolina. And you know what? My uncle kind of looks like Lindsey Graham, the senator from South Carolina. So things are what they are. But Christian the birder, Christian Cooper, has a degree from Harvard. He likes watching birds. I found out he was gay, which is actually, might be a little bit relevant so far as if he was straight, he might not have risked it. There was a way in which, being gay as a black guy kind of takes the edge off of being a black male, especially since the claim she made was that there was a black man attacking me, and when white women do that, there's always kind of a sexual threat that is undergirding that. So I think, I don't know, maybe she just saw a black guy, but maybe something over the course of 50 years being gay, kind of gave him the spine to do it. Because I know that a lot of black guys would have been like, nah, this ain't worth it. I'm not going to jail for some woman dog. So I think about that for a little bit. Anyway, I do want to tell you that, first of all, the quality of political education I give to you every Friday makes me kind of possibly down white unemployable. So the best thing you can do if you care about the movement is go to www.thefunkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, or give me one enormous donation, and that will actually keep me yapping in a way that I think is productive of freedom for the people in the nation. And send this to your friends, send this to your colleagues. Your church is online anyway, so go ahead and send this to your church mailing list, and go ahead and send this to your church mailing list, because you could watch this instead of your Sunday school lesson and talk about it over Zoom. So get this out, because the more people who see this, I think the better everyone will be. So we need to talk about programs that aim to fix the oppressed, sir, not programs to fix the oppressed. And I'm also a little bit, and be very suspicious of anyone who talks about skills gaps and education being the answer. Education is not the answer. Education was not the problem, once again, with my man Christian the birder, being threatened, a hit was placed on him. White women love to sick authorities on people. It's a superpower. A hit was placed on him by that woman, Amy Cooper. And that is where we are. And no amount of education would have fixed that. We don't need to fix anything he did. We need to fix her. And I have very clear ideas what to fix her. We need to fix her by fixing her. The appropriate response, maybe it's not firing her, it's by doing an autopsy of her life. You go after her schools, her church, her family structure, her family habits, because white people learn how to white at home. They learn to lie to their mother because their mother's very fragile. And if you tell her the truth, she'll break out in pills and vodka and lash out in horrible ways. And so you learn to lie to mom because mom can't handle the truth, or you learn to lie to dad because dad can't handle the truth. And then you go to church, it's kind of metastasizes, and you learn to lie to those people because that's as a matter of politeness. And then you expect other people to lie to you. And then pretty much everybody else in the world is expected to preserve white people's feelings, all because of your mom. And so that's how the reproduction of whiteness happens, through the family. So we need to destroy the white family, disassemble it, and then remake it in a place of truth-telling. And truth-telling about race, and truth-telling about class, and truth-telling about a lot of things. And right now, the white family is not a home for truth-telling. It's a place where white people learn how to lie about what it means to be white, or what it means to be anything. And so, and it's where they learn to expect other people to lie to them on their behalf. There's a great piece on this called White Enculturation by Dreama Moon. I might put it in the description of the video. I did a short video on Karens earlier this week when the case of the New York birder first hit. So track that down on my YouTube channel, and that will go into this a little bit more, I think, clearly. But yeah, but in general, white people learn how to lie and how they're supposed to be treated at home, and then they expect everybody else in the world to treat them like that. Whereas black people learned that like home is a haven, and then when we go out into the world, that's where we are on white people's time. So like there's an asymmetry there. I think Dreama Moon's piece puts that very well, actually. Black homes are a haven for whiteness. White homes are where whiteness is reproduced. So if we're actually serious about making black home if we're actually serious about making black homes and the black world a place where black people can be free and not just where we coddle to white people, then we need to actually fix the white home, because that's where they learn their entitlements. So yeah, we need to kind of take the white home apart and then put it back together. And that goes with the white church and all of these white cultural institutions, the white schools. We need to go after all of them. And that's when justice will actually come, when we make that intervention. Moynihan had the report on the Negro family, a case for natural action. We need to go after the white family for any of us to be free. Because, they're on pills anyway. Like, they're not happy. They're all lying to each other and scared of lying to each other. And like, it's all very fragile. So like, it's for them. We need to save them from themselves and for our freedom. But until we do that, like, we're all like hostage to Karen, sicking the powers on them. And this illusion that somehow white feminists in general are arguing for the right to surrender their power to sick either the media or sick the cops on us. They're not. And that's why all real racial or labor justice is going to come through like willing to kneecap them. And honestly, anyone who's not willing to kneecap Karen isn't really someone we need in politics. I will tell you that right now. All right. Lack of oversight. Lack of oversight. That's the third thing. Lack of oversight emerges when we have a program. It's a fund. It could even be a line item program, but we have a program. It's been funded, but yet there aren't people who know what the money should do and how to do it. And then there's administrative bloat because everybody wants to get paid, and then the grifters come in and want their piece of the funding, but there's nobody with actually clarity of mission on what a success looks like and what failure looks like. And then it's just a big grift. It's just a big grift. Oh, hold on. You have to go put some clothes on. So it just looks like a big grift. And that's what happens. So what we need to do is we need to actually think about what it means to install a solution, even with knowing that there are capitalist pressures. There are bills that need to be paid, and if you need staff, and if you have staff for your program, your social justice initiative, they need to be paid all the time. So do you want your social justice initiative to be at the beck and call? You can come back down, but you have to put some clothes on first. Do you want your social justice initiative to be at the beck and call of either government funding or just your head? You can come in. Just your head. There you go. That's you. All right. So as you're flossing your teeth like a good Osei-Frimpong, look at you. So do you want your social justice programming to be at the beck and call of, some white funder?
Yeah.
No, you do not want that. You don't want your justice to depend on some donor's feelings of charity. Because sometimes you're going to need that donor. You're going to have to tell that donor to sit down and shut up. In those words.
That's what you're supposed to do.
Sometimes that's what you're supposed to do, but you can't do that while you also need their check. So you need some sort of independent funding, or set up a structure for independent funding. Or public oversight for funding.
Yeah, overproject.
Oversight for funding. Can you say that?
Oversight for funding.
Right. So it's not at the privilege or the feelings of some other person's charity. Okay? Yeah. All right. Go get ready for capoeira, okay? All right. So that's where we're at right now. You can't get justice while depending on some person, some oppressor's check and their kindness. And then also left up to the interpretation. That's going to be the last one. Oh, you want it on the action too? Okay. Left up for interpretation. That occurs when you don't have your talking points right. So you have this demonstration, but you don't have your arguments right. So when the press comes to you, you don't know what to say, how to say it, and you can't be known or be taken seriously, or you look wild, and that's always going to be a danger, especially if the only way that's always going to be a danger, especially if the only way you can get justice or get heard is if you seem unmanageable. Then the press is going to say you're unmanageable, and you can say that's right. While I was being managed, you wouldn't cover me. So we have to be unmanageable, and that's going to come with, that's like starting a fire, and the nature of fire is to be out of control. So if you don't want any collateral damage, listen to me the first time when I say I need a job or investment capital, right? So I hope this has been instructional. There's a fantastic piece by King. I'll put this in the description also. It's called Showdown for NonViolence. It's just a wonderful, a lot of people are talking about King. A lot of people are talking about Malcolm X right now. They don't really know as much as they think they are. They're talking more than they know. So what they really should do is actually read this piece by King, Showdown for NonViolence, the last piece he released before he caught a bullet. And I think it's a piece he was set to release when he was caught a bullet. I think this direction is the direction he was going and why he became so dangerous. So, thank you for your time. Please share this video around. I think it's very important. It might be more important than what you learned in your civics classes. And remember, George Floyd was already a tragedy when he walked into that grocery store trying to pass that $20. Like, that's the politically preventable harm that we've just normalized. It's unfortunate that it took its death. And also be very careful of these Black Death grifters who only seem to care about Black men when we are on death, when we died spectacularly. Because George Floyd was a public policy problem before he was murdered. He was a public policy failure before he was murdered. And we're going to see a lot of crimes of stress and poverty over the next few months. So remember that. Especially in anytime you see a Black man who's being like caught up on something that anybody with a trust fund wouldn't get caught up on, or anybody with wealthy parents, anybody like, then that's a public policy failure. That's the legacy of being a descendant of slave. And let's be honest, a descendant of rape. So what I tell you, hope you've enjoyed the show, and I will see you next week. Peace.